Welcome to the Dissecting the Wisdom of Shaltazar episodes. My name is Jeffrey Eisen. I'm a spiritual life coach, the channeler of Shaltazar, and an energy intuitive. In these episodes, my collaborator and friend Mark Lane and I will be picking a particular message in each episode that we will be reviewing, having a conversation about, and dissecting the wisdom from. The messages from Shaltazar are very high-level master teachings, and it is key to peel them away, dissect them, comment on them, and discuss them in order to get the greatest value. We hope you'll be intrigued, we're confident you'll learn, and we know you will benefit. And welcome back to another episode of Dissecting the Wisdom of Shaltazar with my co-collaborator, good friend, Mark Lane. Mark, welcome back.
Hi, Jeffrey. Thank you. Good to be here as always.
Yeah, it is. We're really kind of having fun with this. I hope the listeners are enjoying our conversations as well. I've got some great feedback on Insight Timer. Thanks for leaving some of those comments. We really appreciate it. We do it because it's fun for us and it helps us integrate and embody this wisdom in these difficult and challenging times. So thanks for tuning in. Please share it with your friends and relatives. We could all use as much support as we can these days. Mark, today's message that you want to dissect is
finding your unity consciousness.
Yeah, that's a big word. What's it? It's a big phrase. What does it mean to you?
It is a big phrase, and I guess I'm not 100% sure what it means to me. It occurred to me that in our last episode, we talked about time, moving above the fourth dimension being time. And this message, I recalled, sort of tied into that idea of time. You know, I mean, all these messages kind of have a particular concept or a particular sentence or paragraphs that kind of jump out at me and call to me. And this message, the idea that we're experiencing, that this moment is happening all around the world at the same time, actually all around the universe at the same time, being able to take a step back and to feel this moment happening simultaneously for billions of beings everywhere, who are all having a different experience, but all experiencing this moment at the same time. That's what I interpreted as the unity consciousness. You know, collective consciousness is all having a simultaneous experience somewhere in the world.
Yeah, that's really interesting as I reread this one and re-listened to it. And it reminded me when I channel at Shaltazar, often will tell these little stories or analogies to get their point of view across. And I found that one the most fascinating because what they tell you to do, they say, now in the midst of the serenity and calmness of this moment, try to get a sense of all that is happening in this moment. And in order to do so, you must let go of the moment and try to connect to the greater moment. What we mean by that is the now of all time. And then they go on to talk about time zones, which is really very fascinating because I've been fortunate enough that I've traveled a bit. And when you're on the other side of the world and you got to call home, you have to be aware of the time zones. And I've been very fortunate as well, connecting to all kinds of wonderful people all over the world. And I have clients and I connect with people that I do the podcast with. And it's sort of like, well, where are you? Well, I'm 9 hours ahead. Or, I mean, you and I were an hour apart. In this message, Shaltazar says, another line they say is, the separate individual moments occurring all over your planet would be available to you all at once. No longer will you be witnessing millions of separate moments, but instead millions of different experiences all occurring in the same moment. One moment with millions of experiences not separated by distance, but all at once. And the aha moment I got when I was just listening to it, and I never got it before, and that's, I think, the beauty of these things is the more you listen to them, you get these aha moments. And that is that often when we talk about the now, being in the present moment, it's a very selfish now. Like, it's just me. It's just me, right? But what they're saying is that in this moment, there's also your now moment. So here we are recording this, and we're both in the now moment. So you are experiencing my moment, and here I am watching you over Zoom, and I'm experiencing your now moment. And that's what they were trying to get at. Even though we're separated by the distance, you're in Chicago, I'm in Toronto, we are sharing a moment.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to, I think that was the aha moment for me, is like, yeah, it's the now moment is not just mine. It's the now moment of everybody on the planet. It kind of blows me away a little bit.
Yeah, it does, right? Yeah. When you really try to, tune into that feeling of how many consciousnesses or beings there are that are experiencing this moment right now in different places. You picture a Zoom window with 20 billion little pictures on the screen. It's staggering.
Right. And I think that's what they're trying to help us understand. The unity consciousness is when we move out of, and I will call it, I'm not sure that that's aptly put, you're the articulate one, the selfishness of the present moment, the selfishness of the now versus the unity of the now. Okay. And pardon me, I'm going to call it the separateness of the now versus the unity of the now. I think that's the essence of this message. When I'm experiencing my now moment just for me, I'm separate from the rest of the world. But when I experience that moment shared with another person or a group of people or the all, everyone on the planet, then I'm moving towards that unity, that oneness. And it's interesting because a few weeks ago we talked about the message oneness, and it talked about oneness and separation. And here we are back with that concept of unity or oneness versus separation.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of the part of it that stuck with me too, was the idea of, extending your awareness beyond yourself to everyone else who's also experiencing this moment at the same time. And it feels different. I don't know that I can necessarily articulate how it feels, but that present moment is mine idea is very isolated, I guess.
Separate,
right?
Yeah.
And that extending the awareness out to all the rest of the people who are experiencing this moment, it suddenly makes you feel part of something much larger than yourself. Right?
A oneness or a unity, which, by the way, it just hit me as you were saying this, is that ties into our last episode where we talked about moving above the fourth dimension. When you get to that unity, you are moving beyond, you're moving beyond that fourth dimension. You're moving beyond the limitations of time and space. And if you can bring into your reality at that time what it is you desire, then it will come more easily and more effortlessly. So this one is just helping us a little bit with that moving beyond the fourth dimension. In that one, they kept talking about practice and practice and practice. So moving to the unity consciousness, finding that unity within yourself is going to help you manifest much, much better, because it is from that place of unity that you will bring to you your desires. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It kind of goes back to that concept of creating in the now, which we talked about last time a bit, the idea of meditation or calming the thoughts to get to a point of neutrality, and then taking it one step further to using the neutrality to bring those desires or those goals and objectives into a present moment and feeling them as if they've already manifested.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And that moment, that neutrality you're talking about, in this message, Sheltazar goes on to say that it's really difficult to get to that place of neutrality when you're engaged in the mind. They're saying that it is not totally possible for you to fathom this concept in your human logical mind. For, of course, the mind has difficulty comprehending the concept of no distance. Your mind always keeps you separate by never letting you forget distance. It will also not let you forget the linearity of time. So that neutrality, that unity, that oneness, I believe they're saying needs to be felt in a no-mind moment. That neutrality comes from disengaging the mind, which is why you and I are such big fans of meditation, because the busyness of the day, the busyness of our life, and before we got on this call, you and I were talking about busyness, really comes from your mind, jumping from one task to the next task and what's next. And so that disengagement of the mind allows you to go to neutrality, and not only do you get to rest and reinvigorate, but it's in those moments of neutrality, those moments of unity, that you will manifest more effectively.
Right. It's almost like, as you were saying that, it occurred to me that when I think a lot of people, when we talk about the present moment, there's a difference between being in the present moment and being there, and thinking about being in the present moment. Because one of them is analytical, and you're analyzing, oh, I'm in the present moment, right? It's a mental process. Versus when you're truly absorbed in the present moment, and you've let go of the mind and you've let go of time, it's this echoing place of complete silence and presence. It's not something that you're thinking about and trying to put in a box. You're just experiencing it. It's pure awareness.
Yeah. The late Wayne Dyer used to call it the gap, like being in the gap. He wrote a book about that. Talked about the gap between the musical notes and the gap between the words. And you raise a great point. And I love doing these things with you because I say something and it triggers something in you, and you say something and it triggers in me. So maybe to a certain degree, not to a certain degree, definitely we are, as we do these episodes together, we are moving to a place of unity. We are moving to a place of, as you say something, it's triggering something in me, and vice versa, which is really, I think, really fascinating. And I just lost my train of thought, so I'm sure it'll come back. It's my birthday today, and I'm 68, so I'm going to be okay with that. I'm trying to come to peace with the fact that I forget certain things.
I have a terrible habit of getting up from my chair, walking into another room to do something, and getting to the other room and not remembering why I went there. So
yeah, been there, done that, bought that T-shirt. But this, oh yes, I know what I was going to say. I think the place you're talking about, being at that no mind, being in that neutrality, it's like maybe spiritual meditation versus mindfulness. The mindfulness movement, I believe, tells you to just be there fully. And so whatever it is you're doing, you're still in your mind, but you're just watching your mind. So they're not asking you to step back from the mind. They're just asking you to, stop wandering off into the future, into the past, and pay attention in a mindful way, being in the mind. And I think what Schultz-Azar is saying is to let go of that mind, to move to that other consciousness, which they are calling the unity consciousness, which I believe is more of the feeling consciousness. I think that the feeling consciousness, to me, feels more like a unity consciousness because it's in and of the moment. I don't know about you, but if you've ever watched your feelings, and the best example is a baby. Watch a baby and they'll go from laughing to crying in a matter of seconds.
Right.
And that is that unity consciousness where you are in the flow, and whatever's happening, you are allowing to happen. And so I believe what they're saying is to try to get to that place where you've disengaged with the mind, where you've connected to the feelings. You're in that, I like that word you use, that place of neutrality. And just to reiterate, I think there's two great benefits for that. One is a great place to rest and relax and reinvigorate, but the other is the one we discussed in the last episode, where from that place you can bring what it is you desire to you, and it will then manifest easier.
Sure, right. I had highlighted a paragraph in the message, kind of speaks just to what you were saying. I'll read it. We tell you this not so that you will know that you can transcend your separateness by not honoring the mind so much all the time. As we explained, when you drop the mind, you can experience a sense of oneness. We showed you how that is possible in the example of feeling millions of separate moments all at once. If more of you practice letting go of the mind and allowing yourself to experience your oneness, you could attain a new balance on your planet. Yes, a new balance where the separate mind does not have as much power.
Of course, it's no coincidence that I highlighted the same paragraph.
Of course not.
So here it is. Separately, at different times, you're reviewing this message and I am reviewing this message, and we highlight the same paragraph. That is a unity moment. Mm-hmm. You weren't aware, because you were owning the moment, and I wasn't aware because I was owning the moment. But if you were the source looking down, there would have been, I think, a little chuckle as the two people who are going to get together to discuss this message are highlighting the exact same paragraph.
Right.
To me, that kind of really blows you away. And I think that's the essence of owning the present moment in a separate way versus owning the present moment in a unity type of way.
Right. And it kind of staggers the imagination to think that, if we're able to connect in this way through a medium of a message that you channeled from Sheltazar, if all of mankind could somehow connect in some way, what wonderful things we could create together, right? Just by being able to kind of share a common perspective that is operating at that, unconscious level, perhaps.
Right. And that's what I loved about that paragraph is that Sheltazar sort of drops that hint that because, as we are in this period of COVID-19 that they are telling me is the great potential for change. And although this was channeled a long time ago, they're saying it allows us to have a new balance where the separate mind doesn't have the power and the unity consciousness has the power. Can you imagine? And although COVID-19 is being very divisive right now, I really believe that we have a potential to turn it into unity. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting on a coaching session I had today, I was talking to someone who wants to work on this project of creating more unified content. And it reminded me of the Tower of Babel story when, I think as the story goes, at the Tower of Babel, we all spoke one language. And because we couldn't get along and there was a certain amount of infighting, the higher power in its wisdom decided to give us all different languages so we couldn't understand each other. I don't know if I got that story correct. I call it from my youth, right? Okay. So this language is a divisive separating factor. What would it be like if we allowed our current situation to reverse the Tower of Babel effect? What would it be like if we were able to supersede, to go beyond the differences of language and culture and all of those separate things to come together in a greater unity? There's no coincidence that everyone in the world is being affected by COVID-19, some more, some less, but it's not based on race, religion, culture. It's just a human being thing, right? And so if we allow it to unify us, we could, if we are prepared to come more from this unity consciousness, we could really make the world a better place, a more unified place. And that would be phenomenal, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, that would be heaven on earth, right?
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. From a practical perspective, what do you think we as individuals could do to come more from that unity consciousness? To not only, I'm a big fan that if we change, the world changes. And so therefore, from a practical purpose, if we become more in unity, if we connect more with our unity consciousness, then there is a chance that new world vision of a one world coming together is possible. Right. What comes to mind for you on that?
I guess the thing that occurs to me is this idea of encountering others in our lives more from that feeling consciousness than the mind conscious. I think just as human beings, we tend to, when we see another person, we're first struck by maybe physical attributes or what they're saying or doing or the car they're driving or the clothes they're wearing. We're very, and then we start to form judgments and then we start to make up stories about that person and what they're like without even knowing them. It could be a stranger on the street. And I think maybe, somehow short-circuiting that tendency to make judgments or to form impressions based on externalities and to realize that person is my cosmic brother, that we share a cosmic consciousness together, and let that feeling impression dictate our opinion or reaction to that other person over our mind's tendency to want to categorize things, quantify things, and put them in a box so we can put it on the shelf and not have to, to deal with it anymore, I guess, if that makes any sense.
That only makes sense. It's brilliant. As I'm asking that question, I'm saying, am I putting Mark on the spot here? That's a tough question. That's really a tough question. I hope he doesn't get mad at me. And your answer was brilliant, because once again, that judgment comes from the mind. And if we can move to the unity, our unity consciousness, we then start to look at that other person, not from a place of judgment that comes from the mind. We look at what is similar about that person, not what is different about that person. And so I think you got the recipe for success. I think you should be drafting a proposal to the United Nations because I love it. And I do hope that the listeners take heed of that, because if you pay attention, you will realize that often we lead with the judgment. Often we lead with the mind making assumptions about that other person, about what's different than us, whether it's physical attributes or how they speak or the language they talk to. Often I'm on the subway. That was, before COVID, I'd be on the subway and I'd look at someone that looked very similar to me. And for whatever reason, you sort of feel close. And then all of a sudden they're speaking Russian or Greek or whatever, Italian, and for whatever reason, I feel myself pulling back into that separateness. So that's because we do tend to lead with the discriminating, judgmental mind. And if we could practice just opening our heart and seeing the similarities as opposed to the differences, I think we would make great progress.
See with the heart instead of the eyes, right?
I love it. See with the heart instead of the eyes. Excellent. Thanks, Mark. I think we're just about out of time. These things pass so quickly. This is a fascinating discussion. Thank you for it. I'm sure that both of us are going to make a commitment to come more from our unity consciousness. So thanks for picking this message and for your excellent contribution, your articulate points, and that brilliant idea of coming more from unity and less from judgment. Thanks, Mark.
Oh, thank you, Jeffrey. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. We'll see you next time, everyone. Love and light to you all.